enthusiastic today, aren't you? And everything, all holding up the little electronic devices. Yeah, I might have to take my jacket off. This is going to be a hot one, isn't it, today? Well, welcome to the back of my head. There you go. There's the back of my head, me doing one of my several day jobs, which we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about motivation. We're going to talk about what is possible, and we're going to talk about the people that you're going to be dealing with, because you're all pretty smart people. Am I right? I would be worried if you disagreed. So you're all pretty smart people, and the world, all of it, needs smart people, because there's a lot of things in the world that need to be fixed. And you're going to be the people that are going to go around designing the software, designing the things in the future to try and fix things. But I would just like to get back to a basic principle, which is, look at all these people out there in a field, Iron Maiden fans, right? Now I've got a question for you. You see, why are those people standing in a field, getting wet, getting cold for 3 days, waiting for a bunch of people who are 60 years old to come on stage and yell at them? The answer, why? Because they're fans, but because they're human beings. Why aren't they watching it in virtual reality? Why aren't they watching it on, YouTube or Instagram or whatever? Why aren't they doing that? Because they're real people, and people need to be with people. So whatever the software is you're designing, whatever the project is you're working on, remember that at the end of everything is real people. So if you're working on artificial intelligence, just give a little thought to all those people who might just be replaced by artificial intelligence, and think, what are we going to do with all those people? How are we going to, as human beings, communicate with each other and help ourselves along the way? Now, you all know this, of course. This is the phone that invented Finland. Before this phone, nobody really had much of a clue what Finland was for. Maybe it was like for reindeers, animal skins, and rally drivers, people like that. But people don't believe me when I turn around and I get my telephone out from wherever the hell it is, and I say that actually, this is actually my phone.
I'm not gonna.
And,
okay.
I actually had to charge this phone earlier this year. The reason I still carry this prehistoric phone around with me is because I'm kind of awkward with technology. I love technology. A lot of stuff I do uses technology. But it uses technology. I don't like technology that uses me. Okay? So you're in the technology business, but the humans are at the end of the technology business. So just give that a thought. We don't like technology that uses me. You can use technology, it's just a tool. This is just a tool. And I do something really worrying with it. I talk to people. As opposed to writing them emails, I pick up the phone and I talk to people. And we should be enabling humans to talk to people instead of separating them and putting them into little digital silos. What is all this technology for? It should be for making the world a better place. And you do that by bringing human beings together. And if I had one message, is that everything is about humanity. It's about humanity, stupid, to paraphrase Bill Clinton. Anyway, there I am, looking very noble. Look at that. The wind is blowing in just the right direction to make me look ever so like, oh, you know. But, of course, how on earth did I end up, I mean, I'm growing the hair now, it's actually real. They wouldn't let me near an airliner now, no, not with hair like that. But how did I get to the point where I ended up a captain of a 747 and lead singer of this amazing band? You know, how did all this start? What is the art of the possible? What can you do from starting like that? This is me. There we are, this is me. Aged about 15. They've just let me out of the institution. And it's before Photoshop. But I've got a question for you. Before Photoshop, what the fuck is that? I've got to tell you what it is. It's blue crayon. Because I wanted to know what it would look like if one day I could grow a really scary moustache. So before Photoshop, we were inventing Photoshop. We just didn't know it was called Photoshop. We used to paint glasses and things like that on people. So this is not me. This is my great uncle, who was in the Royal Air Force in the Second World War. This is in Malta, where the German Air Force was trying to kind of redevelop the island. But he was the guy that got me into engineering. He was the guy that told me stories about aeroplanes, about being in the Royal Air Force. But I didn't join the Air Force. I made plastic models. I dreamt about flying, but I didn't take up flying because, you know what? I was rubbish at mathematics at school. I was terrible. I was a disaster. I had no interest in it whatsoever. History, daydreaming, stories, that's what I was into. So I thought, no, I could never be a fighter pilot because you've got to be really, really smart, you know, at mathematics. Not true, actually, but I didn't know that at the time. So I had to wait 20 years before that kind of stuff happened to me. I went to school, I really did. I went to university. I did a degree in modern history. I still can't figure those two words out together, modern history, but I was thrown out of school. Not maybe a great way to start your university career. I was thrown out for pissing in the headmaster's dinner. And he ate it. This is my end of term report. Not very good. This phrase, his tongue has always been his undoing. Well, here I am, using my tongue. I've made a fucking living out of it for 40 years, all right? Which just goes to show that teachers don't always get it right. We like to measure everything. We like to measure education. We like to measure intelligence. We like to measure blah, 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 blah. Why? Not because it's good for our education, not because it's good for our creative thinking, no, because it keeps governments and civil servants happy. because they can measure things. They don't care whether or not you understand, and they don't care if you don't know the reason why. But there's three things in education, and a lot of people are only interested in what, and a lot of people are only interested in how, but there's only one thing that actually really matters, and that is why. And the question why is the most awkward question you can ask a teacher, because it means they don't know the answer. Because there are many reasons why things happen. Just a thought. And then so I got my degree in modern history, and I joined a rock and roll band called Samson, and then I joined this lot. Now this is also before Photoshop, I'm pleased to say. I call it the fruit and vegetable lineup shot. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're looking at. I know what you're looking at. It's the eyes. Look at the eyes. I don't know. What's that all about? What's he looking so happy about? You see, when we took this picture, we didn't know there would ever be such a thing as high definition. It's a worry, isn't it? But we went around the world, and within the first year that I was with Iron Maiden, almost every dream that I had from when I was 16 years old, almost every dream I ever had came true in 1 year. By the time I'm 21 or 22 years old, and I was like, okay, if there is some kind of God, can you please tell me why all this happened to me in 1 year? Couldn't you just like waited until I got, couldn't I have worked at getting a #1 album? But no, #1 album, we headlined America. No, we didn't. We toured America. We headlined Reading Festival. We toured Japan. We toured Australia. I'd never even done a gig outside of England before in my life, and in 1 year, all this has happened to me. I thought, what do I do with the rest of my life? Some of you might design a piece of software, and you might end up as the next Facebook. And you might end up in the same situation after a year or 2 years of going, oh my God, what do I do now? What do I do with the rest of my life after this one massive event? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's me. Relax. Do something else. Take up flower arranging. Take up painting. Do something else as well. Because I decided when I was on the road, what I would do, I would take up fencing. I did a few other bits and bobs. I started making rockets. I thought, remember, back in the day, there's sort of little guided missiles sort of thing here. Back in the day, I could take this onto an aeroplane in America. You take it onto the plane, open the overhead bin, put your guided missile in the overhead bin. Nobody cared. It was like the flight attendant would walk past going, excuse me sir, is that a guided missile? And I said, yes it is. He goes, oh that's okay sir, this is Texas, we like that kind of thing. So, but I did it to keep my brain alive. And it's about the why. It's about the why. It's about how can I motivate myself with something new. You know, there's the expression, curiosity killed the cat. No, it's not true. Curiosity is what keeps the cat alive. So, I quit Iron Maiden after, 10 years, absolutely at the peak of our success. I quit. I walked away. And people asked the question, why? Okay, you want to know why? Because I didn't know what the rest of the world was like. I was in a fantastically successful institution. Wow, everybody look at this guy. Hey, there you go. Now I know what you look like. Yeah, excellent. So I'm in a fantastic, successful institution. All around the world, and everything I need is given to me. I want a car. Oh, a car appears at my house. I want a house. Somebody goes, oh, we can buy a house for you. Everything was done. I didn't live in the real world. I had no idea what it was like. Actually, sometimes it's a pretty shitty place, isn't it? But that's why I left. And what provoked it one day, I was doing a solo album in America, and I read a quote. I read a quote in the paper, and it said, all growth is an unpremeditated leap in the dark with no idea of where you are going to land. And I thought, by God, that's correct. In your life, you'll have made some decisions. Something, you come to if you don't know where you're going and you haven't got your mobile with you and you haven't got GPS, you could go left or you could go right. Which one do you choose? Which path you take leads you to something else, But how do you know which one to take? How do you know which way to jump? You don't. You have to use your instinct. And you have to be prepared to take what comes next as part of the creative process. Henry Miller was the artist that said that quote. So I quit Iron Maiden, and immediately I started to learn. I learned a lot of things I didn't like. I learned, for example, that when I cut my hair, that detectives didn't follow me around the supermarket anymore. That was disappointing. I thought, wow, are human beings really that shallow? And the answer is, sometimes, yeah. I learned a lot about singing. I sang with some really, really cool people. I rediscovered my voice. I rediscovered songwriting, all kinds of things, which eventually, when I rejoined Iron Maiden, I brought back into Maiden. I don't believe we would still be here selling out all the shows that we're doing if I hadn't left and then come back and we were re-energized. But that's an instinctive thing, and you have to listen to your instinct. You only get a few chances in your life to make that jump, to make that leap into the unknown. And right now, you can do it. And you can do it because there's nothing stopping you doing it. But when you get further down, or maybe you have kids, maybe you have wives, maybe you have a house, then you have a job. Those are all things that create fear. Oh my God, what happens if, what if, what if, what if, I can't do it. You're afraid to change. But right now, you can do what you want. And it's a great freedom. Use it. For God's sake, don't get a job and just be afraid. Do something with your freedom. Anyway, I became an airline pilot. One of the things I did, I took up flying, finally, at the age of 29. And when I first flew myself in an airplane, it was a revelation. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this before? But I didn't. And I had to teach myself some mathematics and some physics. But you do, because you can, because you want to, not because school tells you to. So I learned all the stuff I had to learn, and I became an airline pilot. There I am, a little bit, quite a bit younger. There you go. About the year 2002 or something there, so 16 years ago. And you can see the problem, you know? When I was the lead singer of Iron Maiden, and I was an airline pilot, everybody wants to have a selfie with you. But nobody is going to get on a fucking aeroplane with you. And of course, the other problem with pilots, I don't know if you've noticed, but pilots get very fat. They do, because they just sit on their ass all day, pushing buttons. And by the time you've had your breakfast, they've had 7. So here I am, I'm too fat to get out of the window. I was an airline pilot for 10 years. I did 6,500 hours of airline flying. During it, I had some amazing experiences. I learned a lot of stuff. And I want to talk about this guy. Who's been bitten by one of these? Oh, come on, this is Brazil. I mean, the mosquitoes in this country have 4 fucking engines, you know, they're that big. So this is I called this, though, this is a very special mosquito. All right, next question. Who saw the mosquito that bit them? Oh, they really are big, aren't they? Yeah. Normally, you switch the light out in the room, and all you can hear is, and you know the little bastard is in there somewhere. But you can't see him or her. This I call the creative mosquito. Why? Because creative mosquitoes are buzzing around in this room right now. And they're buzzing around and you can't see them because they're waiting to bite you on the ass. Why is that? Because you're with other human beings. And when we get together, we do great things. Human being versus tiger. Tiger wins. Human being versus shark. Shark wins. But if we get together, we figure out ways to defeat the tiger. We figure out ways to defeat the shark. We make boats. We build houses to protect ourselves. And all that sort of stuff. But right now, I'm going to talk about the creative mosquito. Creative mosquito, what does that mean? Well, when you come up with an idea, a business idea, let's say, right? For me, it's exactly the same process as writing a song. And anybody here musicians? Probably. Yeah, so those of you who are not musicians, you can ask the musicians amongst you, how do you write a song? And people want to know, it's a mystery. What comes first, the music or the words? Actually, it doesn't matter. Something comes first. Maybe it's just 2 words, and you think, hey, that would be a good title for a song. Maybe you read something in a book, and you went, I'm going to write a song about that. How would we start it? Oh, we'd start it with something, with a riff or whatever. It sets off a chain, it sets off a process. But you need to be able to think laterally. I was terrible at mathematics. But there's one equation which you have to understand. And it's the one for the entrepreneur. Right? 0 plus 0 equals 1. That's the opposite to the government equation. 1 plus 1 equals 0. Where they take a lot of money and they spend it and they have nothing left at the end. You can't afford to do that because you haven't got any money. You need to take nothing, something that's worth seemingly nothing, and then look for something else, put them together, and you create something where people go, wow, I never knew I wanted that. That's an entrepreneur. And you have the ability to do that with your software, with apps. Create things that people need. Don't just create the technical solution. Create something that people need, that they will want to use. It's about humanity, stupid. So anyway, I read a book. I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. There's Jimi Hendrix. He's not a bad guitar player. But this isn't about his guitar playing. It's not about his guitar playing. No. I read a book about Jimi Hendrix. And what interested me, because I was learning to fly, was the way he got around when he was in his career. Back when Jimmy was early in his career, people used to get around in things like this in America, an old DC-3, a little bit quicker than walking, but not quite as reliable. But of course, Boeing had come up with this machine. This is not a 737 MAX, by the way. They'd come up with a 727. Suddenly, America was wide open to jet travel. And guess what? Fuel was so cheap, the tickets were so cheap. And remember, before 9/11, if there was a time before 9/11, that there was no TSA, you could take your dead grandmother, you could take cans of petrol, lighter fluid, chainsaws, whatever the fuck you wanted on an aeroplane, right? Nobody cared. So Jimmy's manager said, hey, why don't we just take a couple of guitars, some drumsticks, and suddenly you can be in San Francisco one day, and the next day you're in New York. And it's going to cost like $500. Wow. And of course, somebody said, well, hey, but what do we do about the amplifiers and the PA and everything? And the manager went, you just rent it at the other end. Simple. So, I read this and I was inspired because I'm a kid. I'm a big kid. a 60-year-old big child, right? So I think, wouldn't that be romantic to fly around with a band and do gigs? Because then I could fly the plane and I could do the singing. Wouldn't that be cool? It'll never happen. 0. Plus, now, is anybody here an accountant? Oh, 2 of you, 3 of you. Normally they hide. Accountants, right? Accountants. The land of no. No, that'll never work. No, that's too easy. Oh, no, that's far too complicated. Nobody wants that sort of thing. Anything to stop you spending money. We had an accountant in Iron Maiden. He's actually a very good accountant. But he said to us, no, you can't afford to tour. Actually, they told us we couldn't afford to tour South America. And we said, no. Oh, yes, we can. Then he said, no, you can't afford to tour Australia and New Zealand. And you can't afford to tour South Africa and things like that. And we went, what do you mean? That's crazy. Because on social media, we're getting all these messages that these Iron Maiden fans want to see us. What happens if we don't turn up? What do we tell them? We say, oh, we're really sorry, we can't come to see you because our accountant says no. We're going to turn them from being fans into being customers. And what do customers do? A customer can walk away. And then what happens? They become fucking Metallica fans. So we said, we can't let that happen. That's a big 0 to you. So we had a 0 from the accountant, and we had a 0. But I came up with an idea, because I was working as an airline pilot, and I knew what aeroplanes actually cost to hire, because that's what we did. And in the winter, in Europe, aeroplanes are cheap. So I came up with a crazy idea. I said, why don't we have a magic carpet? And, you know, an accountant, you go up to your accountant and say, we're going to have a magic carpet. And he says, yeah, you've been taking too many silly drugs, haven't you? You know? And I said, no. I said, I've just been bitten by the creative mosquito drug. I said, because if we have a magic carpet, imagine we have a magic carpet, we can put just some equipment and the road crew and the band all on the same aeroplane, and we can go around the world very quickly, then we can afford to tour. He went, such a thing doesn't exist. I went, oh, really? Now, that is in Curitiba, and there's one person that's not been drinking all night, I hope. But, you know, this is the plane that we rented from the airline, and, you know, you have the idea, you get bitten by the little creative mosquito, you have the idea, and then, oh, then it gets complicated. Because then we had to modify the back of the aeroplane, we had to do engineering drawings, we had to do lots of process, just like writing a song. You come up with the tune, or the words, and then the next thing happens, and the next thing, and then finally you go, shit, we've got to teach it to the band, and now we've got to record it. Oh, this is going to be a pain in the ass. Because it's just process. You've got to do it. For me, the exciting bit is coming up with the idea. That's what I'm quite good at, I hope. I'm not great at process. Good to know that. Note to self, note to all of you, know what you're good at. Because when you know what you're good at, you know what you're not so good at, and you can partner with people who give you the ability to compensate for that. Only by knowing your limitations can you exceed them. Anyway, here we are in Curitiba with the aeroplane. The accountant loved it. We went around the world, we made money. He went, can we do it again? And we did. We went around the world. This is probably the most photographed aeroplane in the world when we went around the world. And we did it. We did it 3 times. The accountant was so happy. We made a movie out of it. There's always one difficult passenger, of course, usually in first class. We made a movie out of it, but it was the unintended consequences of this idea went way beyond just saving money going around the world. It seized people's imaginations. CNN, Fox News, ABC, everybody. I mean, obviously we came to Brazil in it. Incredibly successful. Then, sadly, the airline I worked for 10 years went bust, went bankrupt. Now, I was just an employee. I actually had a job working for the airline. I had another job as well. Not a problem for me, but a problem for 500 people that were out of a job. Not something I want to repeat. A terrible waste of 10 years of people's effort and work, developing processes, esprit de corps, fantastic stuff. And what a waste of human potential to have all that be thrown away because of some bad financial decisions by management. So I decided, because I was a little bit crazy, you know the story, if you want to make $1 million in aviation, you start with $10 million. So I started Cardiff Aviation. And this is what I do. I employ around about 100 people, and we fix aeroplanes. We're an engineering company. It's maybe not as exciting as designing the new Facebook, but it puts 100 people in jobs. It fixes and does really high quality engineering, and I think it's pretty cool. And it tries to give back something, and it uses people, because we have to use people. Obviously we use a lot of technology, but to fix airplanes you need people. So, and I like people. So I'm very happy that we're keeping a lot of people in jobs. It's great. But aeroplanes of course are old technology. Wings and things like that have been around since Leonardo da Vinci, who invented the helicopter. He just couldn't build one with the technology available to him. In the 1930s, there was an airship service from Germany to South America, scheduled. It was the only way you could fly from Europe to South America was on a Zeppelin. And they did it for several years with no accidents, on-time performance, en-suite bedrooms for everybody, high-class dining. This sounds like the 21st century, doesn't it? Except that the technology was primitive. They didn't have the structures, knowledge, and the materials to really do justice to the concept of lighter than air. They had to fill the airship with hydrogen, which is flammable. Why? Because the Americans wouldn't give them access to helium because of the political regime in Germany. The engines were not very powerful, they were heavy, they were unreliable. The weather forecasting was non-existent. The navigation was primitive. How the hell they even got across the South Atlantic so safely is a testament to the skill of human beings. But now, this is not Photoshop. This is the world's largest aircraft. I was an investor in it 8 years ago, and we're aiming to do zero carbon flight. Woo! But zero carbon flight is no use if you can't do anything with it. It's all very well saying, oh, we have zero carbon flight aeroplanes. Yes, they can take a small dog and a mouse, 2 meters. There's no solution for airliners right now except kerosene. And that's just a question of energy and physics. Maybe in 20 years' time, but for now, we need to make engines and operations of airliners more and more and more efficient. And that's the only way we're going to make aeroplanes greener. This is a totally different solution because it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid of lighter than air technology and engine technology, and uses all those advances in materials, weather forecasting, flight controls, knowledge, GPS, everything to make this a viable source of transportation. What can it do? Well, let me give you an example. The payload of this is around 50,000 kilos, 50 metric tons payload, not weight of the whole thing, payload, actual stuff you can carry. It'll go across the Atlantic, it'll go across the Pacific. It takes off vertically and lands vertically. It doesn't need a runway. You could drop it into the middle of the Amazon rainforest and fly it non-stop to Sweden with 50 tons of whatever you want. Fruit, vegetables, drilling machinery, whatever you require. Of course, it'll take passengers, it'll take people. It lands on water, it lands on ice, snow, marsh, you name it. I think it's a game-changing bit of technology. This is an artist's impression of the same vehicle, showing you what it looks like. That's the Airlander. Funnily enough, I got involved with it not because somebody came along and gave me a research paper, but because I met a human being who was interesting. And I got chatting to him because he seemed friendly. And then along came the creative Mosquito, and I went, wow, what a great idea. Let's see if we can work with that. This is called Production. This is another project I'm involved with. One day, I'm in the pub, as I am often. I like beer. And a guy comes up to me, and he pulls out something out of his pocket and says, "Hi, a friend of mine said you were interested in aeroplanes." I went, "Yeah?" He said, "Well, this is part of my aeroplane, and you can eat it." I mean, what do you mean? He said, "Yes, I've invented the world's first edible drone." I went, "An edible drone?" I'm interested straight away. I've been bitten by that fucking mosquito. I'm like, "An edible drone? What does it taste like?" And he said, "Well, disgusting." I said, well, what use is it? He said, aha. He said, in the world, there are lots of natural disasters. There's famine, there's floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, all kinds of situations where immediately after the disaster, there are no ships, the airport doesn't work, there's no helicopters, road transportation is non-existent, and for the first 2 weeks of any natural disaster, there are groups of people, often in small areas, cut off, that need food, that need medicine, that need shelter. That's what this drone does. I mean, that's a cool idea. How's it work? Oh, now we're into process. So what it is, Pouncer is a 3-meter wingspan, biodegradable glider. Each Pouncer costs $500. Use once, throw away. It'll fly 30 kilometers from 10,000 feet. You throw it out of the back of a transport aircraft, 25 at a time, and each one goes to a GPS landing site within 10 meters of where it needs to be. And each one will feed 50 people for 1 day. I thought, that's a really cool idea. So that's a couple of things, and it's from human beings that you get these ideas, not from accountants, not from hedge funds, not from all these traditional sources. It's from talking to people and cooking up crazy, crazy ideas, like beer. So, how did we come up? Trooper beer. Okay, Trooper beer now. Trooper beer started a few years ago. We've now sold 35 million pints. What's that? That's like 16 million litres of Trooper around the world. So I think it's pretty good beer. And obviously 16 million people agree with me. But how did it start? What gave us the idea to drink Trooper beer? Well, let me tell you how it started. A marketing person, right? Marketing, we love them. Marketing person comes up and says, why don't we do an Iron Maiden red wine? Iron Maiden red wine. It's not, why would we do that? He said, because we do it for a lot of bands. We just take somebody's shitty Merlot, somebody's wonderful vintage Merlot, and we put your name on it. And we sell it and you make money. I mean, that doesn't sound like who we are. But, why don't we do a beer? Why don't we do a traditional English ale? That's more our identity. He went, yeah, we could do that. I'll just take somebody else's beer and put your label on it. I went, no, you're a marketing person, aren't you? You don't get it, do you? It's about integrity, and it's about honesty, and it's about doing something fucking interesting. And taking somebody else's beer is a waste of time. Why don't we create our own? At which point, the marketing guy lost interest, and he went away. But I thought, what a great idea. I didn't know how to do it, but I love beer. That was a start. So I came up with what kind of a beer I might want to create, and we worked with the brewery and we created Trooper. And now, 35 million pints later, we've created another 5 different brews. That's one of them, that's another one. And actually, I can announce, just to tease you, that we are about to start brewing in Brazil. And to illustrate the way we're thinking, we're not going to be brewing Trooper, the English beer, in Brazil, because it wouldn't taste right. No, we're going to be brewing a special beer only for Brazil, in Brazil, with a partner. And the name of the brewery is, I can't tell you. So. But you'll find out about it really soon. I thought that you might be happy about that one. Just before we wrap up, you're going to come up with ideas. Some will work, some will not work. Stuff will happen to you in your life that you don't want to happen. Nobody wanted the Titanic to sink, but it did. A catastrophe. But even more of a catastrophe was that about 1,000 people died more than needed to die on that ship. Why? Because of complacency. More people die in the world because we don't give a shit than all the earthquakes put together. Complacency is the big killer in the world. So, when the Titanic happens in your life, and I hope it doesn't, but it might, or when it happens to your business idea, what do? Well, I got throat cancer, and the first thing I did after I got the all clear was I went down to Africa on a British trade mission and started an African airline. Why? Because nobody said I couldn't. You just go and see, well, let's see if this works. We restarted the national airline of Djibouti, which is now going to be quite a popular destination, but not for holidays, with the Iranian situation that's going on. If you care to look where Djibouti actually is. Obviously I took up fencing. When I was doing, I'm the one in the mask, by the way, that's me. Actually, this is me here, there you go. That's in Sao Paulo, in fact, that's in Sao Paulo. But I was doing something similar to this a while back, and I broke my Achilles tendon in half. Oh, shit. How you deal with some, obviously, you know, you go and get it stitched back together. But you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself, and I thought, no, in every setback, there is a gift. Adversity is the mother of invention. So I said, not, oh, I can't do this because I have to go on crutches. I can't do this. No, don't take the attitude, I can't do this. What can you do? And I said, well, I can't move at the moment, but I can move my arm. As it happened, the wheelchair Olympic fencing champion was at the same club. No kidding. I'll go and learn to fence in a wheelchair. And that was a real experience. And I learned a lot because it was totally different. It was a gift that I didn't expect. When you're an entrepreneur, I'll use the analogy of falling off a horse. If you fall off a horse, it hurts. You have two choices. One, you get back on the horse, or two, you never go near a fucking horse again. Only two possibilities. And that's the bit that is hard. Because it is hard, and life is hard. hard. So although there are gifts in adversity, life is still hard. Don't imagine it's easy. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be prepared to fall off that horse and get right back on it again. And do not let it beat you. If you do, maybe being an entrepreneur is not for you. And that's hard, but it's true. Sarajevo, I went into Sarajevo in the middle of the war. Everything went wrong. Everything went wrong. All the stuff that was supposed to happen didn't happen, but we had an amazing concert. And 22 years later, they made me an honorary citizen of Sarajevo because of the show that we did. But the unintended consequences, the gift out of all the chaos, was all the people who were at the show, who were local people from Sarajevo, in the middle of a war, whose lives were changed, and we didn't realize how much difference we made in that concert until they made a documentary. Not we made a documentary, the people of Sarajevo made a documentary about how it had changed their lives. It's called Scream For Me Sarajevo. If you get a chance to see it, you should, because it's a very, very emotional film about something and which is not about, it's not about me, it's about Sarajevo. And last but not least, here we are. This is me in 1984, looking, you know. This is me after cancer treatment in the jungle in Mexico. A little bit skinny. I don't recommend cancer treatment as a weight loss program. But I'll take the gift. And this is me. I don't normally do selfies. This is me. I did a selfie in the middle of my treatment. Remember when I was a kid, I had that blue crayon? Look, that's what it looks like. It's horrible, isn't it? So, with my cancer treatment, I needed to figure out how I was going to approach having cancer. Did I get angry? Did I hate it? Did I fight it? No. That's exhausting. Anger is a really exhausting emotion. You've got no room for anything else in your life except being angry. And you can't do anything. It paralyzes you. So anger is very negative. I had this cancer. It was my cancer. It was part of my body. I made it. How could I hate myself? No, I thought I have to take a philosophy about how I deal with this thing. I thought, right, I will treat it as an uninvited guest in my body. I will politely ask you to leave, but you're going. And that's the end of that. Bye-bye, and don't come back. So that was my attitude. I grew a beard in protest against having cancer. It was a horrible beard. My cat was scared of it. My children hated it. My manager hated it. The band hated it. I hated it. In fact, I kept it because I knew that everybody hated it so much that no self-respecting cancer would be seen dead inside a person with a beard like that. And when the cancer had gone from my body, I would shave the beard off. As it happened, I didn't have to, because the radiation caused my beard to fall out all at once in a day, in a pub, in my beer, in front of my friends. There's no protocol for having your face fall off in front of your friends. there's something wrong with this beer. Oh, it's my beer, it's fallen off. So you get embarrassing things like that with cancer, but you get through it. And talking about unexpected gifts, when you have chemo and radiation, your sense of taste disappears. You can smell things and you can remember how food should taste, but then when you put it in your mouth, it tastes of nothing. It just tastes of no. It's really disappointing, but it comes back, which is the good news. Except in my case, it didn't all come back. What didn't come back for me was sugar. I only have about 20% of my ability to taste sugar. At first, I was like, I'm the guy that eats the Toblerone from the minibar. Milk chocolate, caramel, dulce de leche, all this stuff. Oh yeah! No, it tasted of nothing! No! Biscuits, nothing! They just taste like sand with some salt. I was like, oh, what do I do? All that stuff. I went, hang on. Milk and eggs and meat, fish, vegetables, tasted fantastic. What a gift! What a gift to realise that a lot of the things that I thought was food is not food, it's just sugar. That was one gift. And then I suddenly panicked. I went, oh my God, I'm creating a beer and I have to taste it. How can I create a beer if I can't taste something? If I can't taste sugar. And we were thinking about creating a lager. Well, a lager has a lot of sugar in it, and they're not that different. One lager to another lager to another lager. Not that different. And so I thought about this, and I read a book, and it was about a chef. And it was about a chef who had no sense of smell. But he was a brilliant chef. Why? Because he created flavors that exploded in people's mouths because he had no sense of smell. And I went, maybe I'll do the opposite. Maybe I'll create a lager that has something really extra on the back of it. That's a gift, isn't it? And then I remembered 0 + 0 = 1. I remember that Iron Maiden had a huge fan, George User. He owns a sake brewery. They have a special yeast that gives the unique aroma in sake. George, can you send me some of your sake yeast? Boom, it came through my letterbox at my house. Biohazard. We had to get permission from the Japanese government to actually use it. And now we've created our lager, Sun and Steel, which I'm delighted to say tastes exactly like I hoped it would. So now it's time for me to say goodbye for now, and we're going to have some questions. This, by the way, is what happens when you get drunk on red wine with a French watchmaker. And he said, why don't we do a watch? An Iron Maiden watch. I went, yeah, that would be cool, yeah. And he said, we'll make thousands of them. I went, no, we won't. That's not cool. This is the Ed Force One Captain's watch. It's my watch. It keeps quite good time, thank God. He said, no. I said, no, we won't make thousands of them. That's not who we are. We'll make 666 of them. That's all they'll ever be. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been a little informative talk about innovation and motivation and thinking outside the box. Thank you very much. There's a plan to have some plan to have some questions. I believe, so I am informed. Oh, right, here we go. On the back of the screen. How do I manage to balance your tour routine with family life? Well, in the case of my family, my kids are all grown up, and actually they are on tour more than I am because they're in bands. So actually, I have to try and see them in between gigs. So actually, we're actually a family of musicians now. It wasn't my intention, you know. I just left, you know. What did I leave lying around the house? Airline manuals, model aircraft, drum kits, guitars, and swords. And they were all musicians. So their choice, you know, and I'm very pleased because they're actually all better musicians than I am. Which book am I reading now? Yeah, I'm reading two books. One is a book on fencing épée. The other one is a history of the sword, called By the Sword, by Richard Cohen. Very, very good. And then I've got to finish Anthony Bourdain, Kitchen Confidential. And then I've got about 6 or 7 books in my wardrobe case that I'm going to be reading through the Iron Maiden tour until I run out of books, and then I'll go and buy some more. Hang on. Oh, also, what link can you establish between rock and roll and entrepreneurship? Well, rock and roll is entrepreneurship. I mean, there's, you know, rock and roll is the ultimate proof of entrepreneurship. You start a band with nothing, you create something out of nothing, you start with fans, you start with your creativity, and you know, it's you start with 1 fan, and then 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then 16, and you understand that, don't you? It's mathematics. And suddenly, before you have figured it all out, like the Chinese emperor with a grain of sand on the chessboard, you have a shitload of fans. That's entrepreneurship, you know? Next question. Oh. Right. Well. This is an exercise in completely wishful thinking, right? Because the reality is probably not going to be like this, but I hope, I would hope, right, okay, we'll go back to the previous one. I would hope that cities are more self-sustaining and less damaging. I would hope that people are more tolerant, but also in systems and societies that are more democratic than they are right now and more representative. And what was the other one? The companies. And I would hope that companies can limit the amount of excess profit they make, and that shareholders would accept that getting 5 to 10% a year for sitting on their fucking ass and doing nothing and letting other people do the work would be enough. And I have to say, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist. I believe that capitalism actually has a lot of problems. It does a lot of things badly, but it does things less badly than a lot of the other different systems. But I do think it can be too greedy. How did you become the person you are today? By millimeters at a time. I just used to grow and grow, but I've stopped. Yeah, I mean, do you believe that human relationships are lacking in spite of all the technological growth? No, human relationships are lacking because of a lot of technological growth. Sometimes it can increase human relationships, sometimes it increases isolation. You can't tell me that Twitter has actually educated the human race in any way whatsoever. It's just a fantastic tool for the shallow and the badly educated to be fed propaganda by their idiot masters. What drives you the most? Flight assemblers in with your brain, or having a troop of beer at the end of the day? Oh, having a troop of beer at the end of the day. Next question. We ask the questions. Run out of questions. I am going, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, anybody in between, I respect everybody. If there's any other strange nationalities here or genders, thank you very much. And I am going to go off and have myself a troop of beer. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Caralho! Caralho!